The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Scout 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Scout 6316, North Yelp Road, Settlement say 3,000, I'm 1 for the right.
3,000, Scout 6316.
Redwood 811.
Coming to you from Uncle Jimbo's cabin. Tonight it's floating in the relative northern heavens of the far left coast of North America, anchored with silvery tendrils of love in the desert southwest. We are so happy to welcome our newest member station, WQEE, out of Noonan, Georgia. We are also welcome and give thanks to listeners tuning in through Renegade Talk Radio in Las Vegas, UPRN 107.7 in New Orleans, Wolf Spirit Radio, the High Plains Radio Network, Forest Moon Paranormal, and listeners coming to us from TuneIn, iTunes, TalkStream, Stitcher, and Radio FM. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here at whatever time you are here to listen to the show. We have a great one for you tonight. Matt Powell is going to help us learn how to get over our past so we don't become ghostly ourselves and stuck, and plan our, move toward our goals, plan our future. I'm about to bring him in just a moment, but before I do that, I just have a few words to talk to people. First is, if this is your first night tuning in live, please join us on chat. You can find a chat room at spacedoutradio.com. Or for a fee of just $5 a month, less than a large latte at the coffee shop, you can join in the SOR Space Traveler chat room on Facebook. And if you do join in as a space traveler, you can find a button to click on that on the spacedoutradio.com page. You will receive other cool stuff like free books, swag, private interviews, a newsletter, and all the spacedoutradio.com shows in archives and more. We are so happy that you're here. I've got James making odd noises. You can probably hear that. That's James making odd noises. Hold on one second. Let me see what he wants. Can't tell. All right. With that, okay. With that, he's just trying to let me know that I'm echoing a bit. Not sure what to do about that. Okay, with that, let's bring in our guest, Matt Powell, and we'll do our best not to echo. That's all I can say, James. James is our producer. For those of you in Noonan, Georgia, this is the first night listening to us. It might be a little odd, but for those who are used to us, James is our producer, and he's also the host of the upcoming show on Spaced Out Weekend later on. So you'll get to know him very soon. For those of you who know us, well, you know us, so thank you for being here. Matt Powell is coming to us from Albuquerque, New Mexico, just down the street from me in Madrid, New Mexico. And he is going to be talking to us about his work with Pramic and also his latest book, which is called Undo. And Matt, thank you so much for being here.
The joys of modern radio, huh?
I guess so.
Gotta love it.
Yeah, I guess so. So I was just asking you just moved from Atlanta back to New Mexico. Welcome back to the land of entrapment. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy to talk to somebody who's relatively local. And one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you on the show was that the subject that you talk about, clearing your past or clearing yourself of the past so that you can move into your future, it comes up a lot in the work that I do. I do a lot of Akashic record readings, past life readings, and over the years I've worked a lot with karma, or the idea of karma. And I've kind of gotten to this state where I no longer believe in the religious idea of karma that, if you do something bad has to happen to you. It's more along the lines of memory and desire. If you really wanted something and you didn't get it, or if you really desired something, you set yourself up again to a similar situation that you may have had in a past lifetime. And a lot of times when I'm working with people, it's almost as if I find that we as human beings tend to become ghosts of our former selves as we're working in this lifetime. So, and in the paranormal, which a lot of our listeners are paranormal investigators and interested in the paranormal, we find a lot of ghosts who are simply trapped because they feel they did something in the past and they won't be allowed to move on or allowed to go to heaven. So that's why I invited you on the show. What's your take on this, and what is undo?
So undo is, in a world kind of gone mad. It's my attempt to help people out. I think you put it perfectly when you said, a ghost of our former selves, because in reality, that's kind of the way that our brains are designed. Our brains are designed in a way that worked really well for our ancestors, 10, or depending on who you listen to, 100,000 years ago, living on the plains and trying to get away from the saber-toothed tiger. And, our brains were designed to take everything that we had learned and everything that happened to us that day. And when we go to sleep, we process that all through the hippocampus, and it kind of categorizes it in our brain. And then the next day we wake up, and if we come up against anything that was remotely similar to what just happened the day before, we automatically, our conscious brain that's interacting with the world in front of us, asked the unconscious brain, hey, what happened last time? What was the situation last time that actually happened? And the two interact to try to draw an assumption about the way that the future is going to go. And so that works really well when you're not trying to touch a hot frying pan, or not, pick up bleach and drink it or something like that. But in our day-to-day lives, with our families or our business, or even, in the paranormal world, that doesn't work very well. And so one of the things that I try to do with Undo is to create, this process that people can go through with the book and the workbook. And now we have, 3 videos and, this whole product that people can start looking at their successes and their failures. And they can start finding, the themes, because, it's not about what you succeed at, it's why you succeed. It's not what you fail at, it's why you fail. And try to identify that why, and then kind of correct what that why is so that you can move forward going into the future. I actually listen to Spaced Out. I hike the Sandias listening to it. I'm that guy walking, really fast with headphones in my ear. And, I began all of this about 20 years ago when I was in the Russian martial arts. I'd never really done martial arts before, and some people are familiar with the Russian martial arts. And while everybody went in one direction, I went in another, and I ended up going kind of back to the source in Russia and spent time going back and forth there. And that, over a number of years, eventually some friends and I, we created our own martial arts system, which is called Pramek or Pramek, or, kind of people pronounce it however they want, about a decade ago. And it was a very scientific system for martial art. where instead of kind of looking at the rising dragon claw, or these different concepts that had come from the East, we tried to really break it down to, the physics and the mechanics and psychology and neurology. And so we specialized in that. And over time, I published a lot of books and hundreds of videos and taught thousands around the world. And it kind of led me to this point where I was seeing this constant problem that was there, that people were so tied into the past, I couldn't figure it out. Then I really started studying it, trying to figure out exactly what was going on, and that's what it was that processing that was going on at night when people go to sleep. And so, undo is my personal transformation method, I guess you could say. It's the same thing that I did for the martial art world, brought to kind of that personal growth world.
So this sounds a bit to me, I've gone through the Silva Ultramind training and Silva Masters on my own, but I've done it. And so in Silva Masters, we would do a lot of work at night. We would do a lot of work reprogramming. We would do a lot of work with our guides in our labs and that sort of thing. And it's funny because you mentioned Jose Silva. You mentioned some of the oldies but goodies in self-growth. And how does what you're doing relate to that? Some people will know who are listening, and some maybe younger listeners, but if there's been talk over the years, Silva and Est and Landmark, and it's a cult. But everybody I've ever known who's done this work has really had a lot of personal transformation and growth. And some of my teachers, my first Reiki teacher, she was doing Landmark, and she's now become this incredible energy worker, but mainly because she cleared away her own past stuff while she was doing Reiki, but she was also working on her own past and overcoming that. So explain, how does it relate?
Well, I think most systems nowadays, there are a lot of marketing, a lot of cheerleading, firewalking, whatever it is out there. Unlike in the past, when personal growth was really pushing the limits of what people could achieve. So when you look at people that are the foundation of personal growth, people like Buckminster Fuller or Werner Erhard with Est, or Jose Silva with the Silva Method. I went to the Silva Method in 2002, and it was mind-blowing. And it was before I was actually exposed to the teachings of people like Werner Erhard. And the funny thing about it is people on the outside say it's a cult, and then once they come into it, all of a sudden they realize, and I think there's a lot of challenge to these kinds of programs and these kinds of teachers, that they challenge that filter. They challenge what we know about the past. They challenge our thought process about the past. And even I remember going through the Silva Method and sitting there just floored at the knowledge that was there. And I remember actually being in Russia, and one of the instructors over there, he was a scientist, and I said, "What books do you want me to ship over when I get back that you don't have access to?" And Silva Method was one of them, that he wanted everything that he could get on it. And I think the funny thing about Est and Werner Erhard is that Werner never actually wrote a book. Everything from Est was sold to Landmark, and he went on, he fled the country or whatever, and then he developed, now it's a lot of different things, but he never actually wrote it all down. And so you have these people that have done so much work, but I think I have a little something different that I share from my 20 years of teaching around the world to thousands of people, is that everything that I've worked towards for 2 decades has been about how to operate under stress. The most stressful thing that you can possibly go through, which is defending your life, whether you're a police officer or a soldier, or you're a woman walking a parking deck, whatever it is. What is the most stressful situation that you can go through, and how can we bring you through that? The problem with these filters is that when you look in martial art, they create a time delay. And, because all of a sudden you start trying to go through the first time you were abused. You don't know you're doing it, but your unconscious brain is going it's in the Wayback Machine. It's like in the 50s in a time machine. It's like hit the little dial and everything outside is changing, but you're still the same and you're here. And all of a sudden you're having to fight through all of these different things. So we created this methodology that would get people past that. And we applied it specifically to martial art and specifically to combat. And I had some things happen in my life a few years ago and I had a death of a close friend who I didn't even know was a student of mine. He was just buying all of my videos. And he said, I feel like you can do something more than what you're doing. And I started this little site called Pastless.net. So Pastless. It's the same concept over and over, and it was my non-martial art blog. It was kind of where I could write all the stuff that the martial art community wouldn't see, because it'd be like, what is this? He's supposed to teach us how to hit people. And it got a lot of hits from places I didn't expect. So I decided to go full in and try, this personal transformation with the processes that we developed with the martial art. And a lot of the large martial art schools now use the materials that I've created over the past 5 to 10 years. If you're in a large martial arts school or an MMA school, you're probably being exposed to Promex methods because it became so tied into what they were trying to teach. So I said, why not, try it with the personal transformation side. So when we look back at those old names and we look back at those, a lot of times I say we don't need a lot of the now, because it's a lot of cheerleading, it's marketing, it's driving money. Half the time you see people doing personal growth on the side. They're doing like internet marketing and trying to drive dollars. That I'm trying to bring it back to what those people were doing, which is the tapes in the car, the books to read, the workbooks to try to transform your life.
Right. Which is wonderful. I want to get into a little bit more of the method with you. One of the things that I found, and I'm getting the sense of this as you talk, is that, and I have a problem with this even in my daily life, because I am self-reflective. So, for example, if I find myself having a conflict with someone, and just recently, and people may know about this on the show because I've asked Joanna and I've asked Geeter about it on the air, but just recently I had a friend who I invited to come to my shop and help me. But what I meant was, you can come hang out here in Madrid, and she's an artist, and she hadn't really been doing her work or anything. I said, you can come and hang out here and make some contacts. Well, she turned it into, I can come and take over your shop. And I was reacting, very in a kind of aggressive, like, F this way, if she would say something and I'd say, F that, and I'd find myself, being offended. And I thought back to the last time when somebody seemed to want to get in my space and control me and control it. And I thought, okay, I'm being reactive because I haven't gotten over this person trying to control me and control my space. And but the fact of the matter was, that was part of it. But the other part of it, she really was trying to control me and control my space, and I didn't want any of it. And so I have problems sometimes sorting out, because I'm so reflective. I'm so, I don't want to be that person who keeps replaying the past because I'm not over it. But then I find out that I'm replaying the past because I'm not over it. And I think this happens to a lot of people who get on the intuitive path and the spiritual path, is that when you start taking responsibility for who you are and what you're doing and where you're trying to go, you notice these events that happen where you're getting reactive based on something that happened in the past, but it's also happening over again. So is this part of what you're doing, is training people to notice this and training them how to overcome it, or what do you do in Undo?
So it's kind of two separate questions. The first part is that when you were talking about this, and I'm not trying to analyze it, but I guess I am a little bit. When I come to your shop and Madrid, you can slap me around.
No,
so you said a lot of I. And, one of the problems that we have is that we think in the here. And so we know the here, we know the who's, the what's, the when's, we know everything about the here, but we don't think about the there. If you can think for a minute in your mind's eye that you have two people in a room and you have the here, you have the there, and then you have the room. And so when you get past everything that happens, you look back on it from the room. Mm-hmm. Well, they said this and I said that. Instead, what you have to do is you almost have to put yourself in the there. You have to see yourself from the there. Everything that they see and I'm going to be a little bit martial arty here, everything they see is a weakness, everything that they could react to with what you're saying, everything that is there, seeing here, is kind of what you have to look at. You can't look at it from the room, because if you look at it from the room, you're ignoring the there. Does that make sense?
And what is the there? I mean,
there is the other person.
Okay.
So you have to get in their mind, their experiences. Why are they acting this way based on their past? Where are they coming from? And
no. Yeah, I ended up doing that. And I still haven't talked with this person, and I should. And it made total sense. It wasn't about, trying to do something to me, as in the I. It was about what they thought, what they had experienced, what she had experienced, what she had gone through, what she knew. Yep. And it wasn't, there was very little that had anything to do with the I or the me.
So if you look at undo, what you have to do is one of the things we talk about in undo is that is uncontrolled access to the past. Okay. So day to day, we have uncontrolled access to the past because we don't control that relationship between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So if you remember earlier, I said that the unconscious mind catalogs everything. I mean, it literally catalogs everything that ever happens to you. Then the conscious mind asks that unconscious mind for, that assumption about what's going to happen, right? And so what often happens is, well, not what often happens until you actually are kind of exposed to the idea that is completely uncontrolled. And so it leads to you being uncontrolled in your emotions. It leads to being uncontrolled in your reactions because you're letting the past completely dictate the future. So what you have to do is after that situation, you have to go back and pick out the things. You can't have uncontrolled access to the past, or you just go to the future looking back, stumbling as you go. And so, you have to go in almost like a bear. A bear doesn't run down to the stream and just slam into it and grab up 10 fish. It sits on the side and picks out a fish at a time. You have to pick out the things that you need, work on those things in your next interaction, and then come to that point after that next interaction and see where you are at. And then at a certain point, if you are unable to work on that to a point that you get somewhere that you need to go, then you kind of almost have to either radically change the interaction or you have to end the interaction. And so what undo it does is that it looks at the here. It is looking solely at the here, not the there, not the other person, not anything out there. The only time it looks at it is what does that person have that can help me achieve my goals? With undo, what we're trying to do is identify those things that you've picked up along the way that are creating this kind of tie that binds, this theme, and then trying to correct that theme. So if you dig deep into undo and you start listing these things out, what you'll find is you'll start to find these personality traits that you have that probably date back to something that you didn't really tie those two together. And it's not about that thing that happened in the past. It's the fact that now in the present, you have this thing and it's stuck to you. So what do you do with it? Because it's determining everything that you do. And so you have to create kind of a corrective action, which undo teaches you in order to get past that. So you're not bringing it forward as you move towards your goals in the future.
Mm-hmm. So I have had this thing, and I've known it's been a problem of being very easygoing and very flexible with people. And what it set up for me before I even started to work for myself was overwork. I worked at MIT, and I would end up, when I was supposed to be working for 2 professors, I'd end up with 5. Because if somebody really needed something, they could come to me and I'd go do it. And then
everybody goes through that. Yep.
Yeah, everybody goes through that, and it's called, yes, you're good at your job, and yes, you can prove it, and yes, you want people to like you. But now I have the sense that sometimes this is still replaying in the fact that I look very flexible, but on the inside, I'm quite driven by my goal. And this comes from having a racehorse who said to me, and I'm an animal communicator, it was actually the horse who hit me in the head with this. He said, stop running around in circles and just go straight to your goal. And I tried to do that, and then I find, like you're saying, all these little personality quirks or these personality traits that used to work that don't really work because they give off an impression that I'm still back there. Well,
they might have worked at a certain time, and since they worked at that time, you've carried them forward, but now you're in a different time.
Yeah, now I'm in a different time. They don't work, and I don't really want to give the impression that I'm a pushover doormat who will do anything for you, at the expense of my own goals. Which kind of was what was going on. It's called the assistance trap, but in my mind, but it's also, yeah, she's easy. No.
Well, I think a lot of times what happens is that if most of the time when we pick out goals, we don't pick out goals that we don't say, who do I want to be in the, who is the person that at 70 is going to tell the story of my life? Does that make sense?
But I do. But I get you. But I have. Yeah. So I do have a goal. Yeah.
A lot of times, we don't plan it out enough. We don't have these waypoints that we talk about in Undo that are things that are being done every day. We create a new habit. Undo is a very neurological book. It's very much about neurology and the way that the brain actually works. And a lot of people talk about hacking the brain or hacking, life hacks or whatever. You don't need to do it. At the end of the day, your brain wants to be rewarded for things. So you give it new things to be rewarded by that work you towards where you want to go. And, I told somebody a long time ago that, you're trying to do 2015's work with 2013's mindset. Mm-hmm. And, I think a lot of people go through, I know I have personally exactly what you're talking about, which is because I'm known to, despite everything that I've done and everything, kind of as a bit of a pushover in my group of friends. And it's mainly because I don't want to upset the balance. I don't want to create the negative energy between me and somebody else. I'd rather just, there's a reason why a rudder is at the rear of the ship instead of the front. The waves are coming in and you're guiding from the back and kind of working with what you have. Mm-hmm. That, I've also had to realize that doesn't work. But I think the thing is that you can't, the problem with the brain a lot of times is that you have these neural pathways that are developed. And if you try to create an entirely new one, especially as you get advanced in age, you don't have, new neurons and so forth. And so you end up just coming back to the neural pathway that's already developed. And so you almost have to, and it's one of the things that we talk about in the video series for Undo, is taking where you already go to the point that you recognize that it doesn't work for you and then making the break instead of trying to create an entirely new personality that at the end of the day, your brain's just going to bring you back to who you were. So you kind of get to a certain point, you recognize that point, then you make that slight alteration instead of trying to create something new.
Okay. Got it. I think, maybe, a little bit. Sort of. Gosh, I hope so.
If you don't got it, just ask me.
Well,
I get wordy, but I can dial it in if I need to.
Well, when I did work in Silva, I'm usually pretty practical, I'm practically based. So the thing that Silva Ultramind helped me with, it was entirely practical. It would be, I am having a bad day or a bad morning, or, I've gotten this phone call, it's from a family member, or something else has happened, and I need to go do spirit mediumship, which means I need to be psychic enough. I'm upset, but I need to be psychic enough to get somebody's name, place where they live, date of birth, what they look like, blah, 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 all the stuff that evidential spirit mediums have to do. So I would stop what I was doing, and I would do Silva Ultramind and basically reprogram this idea that, holy crap, I'm in such a bad way. What the F is going to happen when I try to do spirit mediumship in half an hour? And so instead I'd go into Alpha, I'd go into Delta, I'd go into Theta, and I would program in, I will hear the person's name, I will hear the age they died, I will hear their relationship, hear and see and feel their relationship, I will hear and see and feel. So I would basically reprogram everything from that practical, I really just need to get this done, without thinking about my own stuff. And it would work. So what does undo work in that way for people in terms of, okay, I just need to be able to do this?
So if we go back to the base thing, which is, I'm having a bad day. And this is one of I often run into it when people, they do journaling. And, I think the point is to almost not have to journal, to live in a path that you recognize that the bad day is part of the way that your life is. It's kind of like I say, act like when people say I didn't ask for this to happen, you have to reprogram your brain through a process like undo to immediately say, how would I act if I did ask for this to happen? And instead of pushing against it and resisting against it and, turning the rudder and turning the ship, instead of saying, I didn't ask for this to happen, so I need to do this process. Right. Instead, say, what would I do if I asked for this to happen? And then take that moment, that paradigm shift in the mind, to, even if you have to bring out a little piece of paper and write down everything that you would do if you asked for it to happen, and then do those things in correlation with what's happening. I'm not big on resistance. I think anybody, in the martial art world that's known me for, 20 years knows that I'm not huge on resistance. I'm huge with going with what's coming. And that's why I kind of came up with, what would I do if I asked for this to happen? Undo is about creating that even when those things pop up and you have to do the Silva method, or you have to pull out your piece of paper and write down, what would I do if I had asked for this to happen? Undo is about looking at your goals that you want to achieve and the places that you want to go. And regardless of those things that happen, I call them noise. They're noise between the successes and failures, because we remember the successes and failures. We go have a drink and we celebrate the success, and then we feel bad and we get a kick in the pants for the failure. That there's noise in between those high points in our life, almost like if you looked at a seismograph. And so between the peaks and the very bottom, there's that length that's there that is our everyday lives. And so undo is about creating a process for the way that you live, that between those peaks, you are still achieving the goals that you want, because you've set up the way that you live your life with the habits that you develop in order to make sure you're doing the things, so that at the end of the year or the end of 5 years, you may have a whole lot of lines, but they led to a higher success peak and kind of that lower failure, I don't even know what that's called, the bottom of the V, I can't even think of it, that, you've achieved the things that you want. So on a day-to-day basis, even when those things pop up and you have to go back and you have to center yourself like you're talking about, and, go into your process, get past what is happening right now, or at least deal with it, you're still living in such a way that you're achieving your goals.
Right. Well, and this is something that comes up. I just had a conversation with a great friend who we both have the problem of sometimes manifesting things that other people think are impossible to manifest. And, this is from living the dream life in Colorado, paid for, to, deciding to move from one part of the U.S. to another part with just what's in your car, and then becoming very successful in the place that you went to. We were talking about that there's also an underlying current of working toward the goal without trying to control the outcome too much, which is I will get up and I will work toward this goal every single day, regardless of what happens, and whatever happens, happens. And this friend and I will often find that things that we don't expect that are better than we could have expected ourselves to create will happen. Does undo take into account sort of this underlying manifestation ability?
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because I don't think, and I'm not picking out your words, but I don't think day to day that it is possible to work towards a goal, if that makes sense, to actively and consciously work towards a goal. Because there's so much that's going on in your life and around you that if you're actively trying to work towards something, many things are going to happen that they're going to... I want to change
the way I say that. What I mean is you hold up... Yeah, no, actually that's right. You're right. That's not what I meant. What I meant is that you have that goal in mind. You may end up doing absolutely what looks like nothing during the day toward it, but it's still there. You haven't changed your direction. And what I see a lot of people doing is, well, today I want to do this, and then today I want to do this, and then today I want to do this, and they're all over the place, and then they wonder why nothing happens.
So undo has a couple of phases. Phase one is reflection. So in the reflection phase, you're going through the past. Then you get to, you're going through the past, and you're going through your successes and your failures, and you're reflecting on them. Then phase two, you're working through your themes. So, what are the themes behind it's not the what you fail at or succeed at, it's the why. And then figuring out what those are, then you get into the correction phase. And then that correction phase is trying to set you up so that in the future, as you work towards the goal day to day, because, it is day to day, you have to do something in order to achieve the goal. And so, you're trying to correct those things that would usually drive you off course. Okay. So you're creating new habits. You're taking something that you're very successful at, and you're replacing that kind of failure theme with the success theme. Then you get to the goals. And then you go through this big process with the goals. You divide and conquer it, where you kind of figure out what's important, what can I achieve right now versus what can I achieve in a week or two. And then you get into, your preparation phase. So this is the phase that we're talking about, is the preparation and the implementation. So the preparation is, your declarative statements. Do you really believe in the goal? Do you really think you can achieve this goal? Because if you say that you want to be president, but you've never been in politics, my dad ran for governor of North Carolina years ago. And, what my dad really wanted to do was help people, and he saw the government as a way to do it. But he didn't figure that out until he didn't become governor. And so, it's breaking down in there and kind of digging into that goal. Then you get into implementation. So the implementation side of it is creating what I call it's literally, and I know you understand this from your background, is it's using the way that your brain is neurologically designed in order to do very particular things every day, almost with a Pavlovian response when your cell phone goes off and your calendar dings and you have to do it in order to, despite all those things that are happening, you're still working towards that goal. Where the problem, where it becomes difficult, and what undo works you through is making sure that the things that you're doing day to day aren't so big that you can't do them. So you put it off till tomorrow. And then next thing you know, you have a whole lot of tomorrows that are stacked up, and you haven't achieved that goal, and you probably should have done it in 3 months, but it's taken you 9 because you just kind of push it off. So you really have to break it down day to day of what you're going to achieve.
Got it. So it's how not to have your eyes get bigger than your ability to get the to-do list done. And this is terrible because I'm such an inventive thinker. I can invent 10 things that I think would be good ideas, and then it's like, wait, no, stop. What are you doing? Get back to get back to doing this. And I've kind of turned into multitasker. Like my main goal, I'll do 2 things, and then I'll have 10 other ideas, every day.
Well,
I'll do 2 things.
The thing that people always tell me with Undo as they go through it is that they get to this point in it that all of a sudden they really have to look at Undo is about achieving goals. It's not about setting goals. So the process is about if you're going to set a goal, then it has to have a whole lot of things that are divided out of it and taken into consideration because you can't get time back. So you're going to spend your time trying to do something, trying to achieve this experience. And so you can't get that time back. So if you're going to spend the time, then why not have a process to go through, which is, Undo is a book and then it has a workbook. And the workbook, most people say they love it, but it's very grueling because it really makes them look at the goals they've set and then actually use the process to see if it's achievable. Because there was a study that came out recently that said that when they looked at the way that the brain worked, it didn't matter if you bought like a $1 piece of candy at the store or a $30,000 car. The brain had basically the same reaction. If you wanted to get something and you got it, it didn't matter how big it was. The brain still had the same reaction. And so I think that's why people spend all the time now. People go on Amazon, click, 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 and they've got something new. Is we're finding that it doesn't matter if it's small, or if it's very big, that people are still going to have the same reaction. So when we realize that, and a lot of Undo is realizing that current state, the way that your brain actually works, and then saying, you know what? I know I set a big goal, but it's about achieving the goal, not setting the goal. So let me see if this goal that I set I can actually achieve. And what most people find with Undo after they go through the workbook and they've read the book is they end up in a place where they're like, I could actually achieve that goal in a month. Mm-hmm. I can get these things going because I've actually realized that it's not about setting the goal, it's achieving the goal. I'm still going to get that same feeling. Let me focus on what's achievable.
And that ties into a lot of other things and techniques. Like in Reiki, we have this thing, just for today, do not worry. Which
I've always been fascinated with Reiki.
It's one of the easiest things. Like a lot of times we don't think we can achieve a goal because we worry about whether or not we can achieve it. So what you're cutting through is you're cutting out the worry about whether or not you can achieve it, because when you break it down, you see that there's nothing to worry about. All those steps are doable. And in Reiki, what we have this thing we can say every day: just for today, do not worry. Just for today, do not anger. Honor your parents, your teachers, your friends, and every living thing. Earn your living honestly. And then you think about that and you break it down. And it's like, well, what does that mean? Oh, right. This goal that I want to do. Why am I worried about whether or not I can achieve it? What you're saying is, yeah, you show people that if they are willing to look at every step is achievable. So why are you worrying about it? Go do it.
Yeah, if it's achievable, and I think that's the biggest thing is that like you said earlier, your eyes get bigger than your stomach. Which anytime I see a pizza or burrito, that is immediately what happens to me. Is that and then I've got to try to figure out how to eat the whole thing. That it's the same kind of thing when you look at, I guess, the stomach. It takes about 20 minutes for the stomach to communicate with the brain that the stomach is full. But if you have one bite and once it hits the stomach, 20 minutes later it'll tell the brain that it's full. That goals are kind of the same way. That the neat thing about Undo is that it sets you up on this course that you're getting that I'm full every day. You're getting that sense of achievement, and it's because you've set goals that are reasonable. And I think that's the biggest difference between when you look at some of the things that are out there that are like, you can, if you just sit and think about it, you'll make $1 million. That, instead what we try to do is recognize how people's lives are day to day, what people's circumstances are, and then Undo tries to get them, it tries to pull out of them through, kind of pushing through with the book. The workbook pulls out of them these smaller, really focused things that they can look at and go, you know what, that's actually why I wanted to achieve the goal. Now I have that why. I'm going to forget that what a little bit, and I'm instead going to take that why and I'm going to apply it to something a little bit more achievable.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And for those of you who have done The Secret or are doing something like The Secret, I'm just going to call it out because I get so many clients who call me on this and they're like, well, I had one client and she should have known better. I hope she's not listening. This was a while ago. It was actually over 4 years ago. She called and she said, she didn't tell me what she wanted. She wondered if she was going to be a success. And I saw her being a very reasonable success at what she was doing, to the level of a certain other person in the field who has recently passed, but nevertheless is very, very famous in the field that she was working in. And I said, yeah, you'll be as successful as this person. I wouldn't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Well, what she wanted me to tell her was that she was going to be as famous and successful as Oprah in 4 years, because she'd been doing if I think about it, I will have it in 4 years. And that's not what Spirit said. When I looked at it, that's not what her guide said.
The guide's like, please stop this woman. Now I'm going to have to deal with all these other issues. Please stop this.
Please stop her. Please tell her what she can expect. And I didn't know what she was expecting me to say. Well, I ended up getting a 1-star review and her telling me that, like, all of the other people in her life who had tried to keep her down, so she was working out of her story in the past that all these people had tried to keep her down, I was doing the same thing. And that I just didn't understand abundance consciousness. And I'm like, I was just telling you what your guide said.
This is the problem, I think. When we talk about, it's not often that I end up doing an interview where somebody knows what Landmark Forum is. When you said that, I just wanted to come to Madrid and hug you. And I think the thing is that we've gotten to this place where, people want that shortcut so much. It's like I tell people, I'm with Undo and Pastless, I'm not your cheerleader, because the cheerleader does nothing. I'm your teammate. I'm in there. I'm passing the ball to you. Like I'm out there. Everybody that goes through this, I constantly want their feedback on it. I'm constantly looking at what it is and trying to adjust it, because that's what I learned to do, for 20 years with martial art. And the reason we were successful with what we did is because, we know that people change, that people have different reactions to things. And I think when you look at The Secret, and I have no problem calling it out, just like I call out, firewalking. Is, you can firewalk now, but unless you can firewalk before you deal with your boss, firewalking did nothing for you. because it was a moment in time, you had that experience, and it gave you that sense of accomplishment after you had gone through all these things that gave you a sense of accomplishment. And now you're in front of your boss and you've been there for a week and you've gotten hammered on this report, or you're in front of your child and they're being difficult all week because they've been sick, and you can't firewalk before that. You have to recognize how the brain works and work with what you can actually do. And that's why I have a day job, and because I know that long term there will always be resistance to what I do, but I think it's important, just like the people that have come before me, to put that out there and to be realistic about it. Because my father, I used to see the Zig Ziglar tapes. I used to see these things, and I looked at, he would drive for hours at a time. He would listen to these tapes, and there's something to that when you look at an entire generation of men and women that were listening to something and doing these certain types of programs, and the methodology that was behind them, that we created the economy that we have today, that we created these things. And I really think that, those old tapes of Jim Rohn and everybody created a lot of what we have today. And never do you hear them say, just think about it and it will happen. You have to have that action part of it. And I think that's the most important part of it. And what Undo really tries to drive home is getting you to a realistic point and then giving you a process that you can create a habit out of to achieve it. Sorry, I went a little off the reservation right there.
Yeah.
But I do get fired up about that, because I think it's unfortunate that, I know a lot of people that have gotten tied into that, and 5 years later their lives have not changed. And, it upsets me. It hurts my heart when I see that, because I think it preys on people's the way that we actually are naturally, which is, if you look at the way that our brain works, we're actually very lazy. And, those types of things prey on it a little bit. And I think, people like you and myself and others that are out there pushing back against it with new ideas and new concepts, that we can really change the course of people's lives.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say that guides, when I work with guides, they look at our lifetime as a lifetime process of learning. And if we don't take the steps, or take each step toward the things that we have as our goals, and they're talking about setting goals, between lifetimes. Okay, what do you want to do next lifetime? Oh, I think I'd like to do this, and this. What the person will find in the work that I do is that if they are in line with what they set up before they came in, or if they make a major decision to change it when they're in this life, and they're really 100% behind it with their soul, with their spirit, with their consciousness, they can change what they decided to do between lifetimes and say, oh, right, I really don't need to learn that after all. I think I'll move on and do this instead. Spirit will move with you. Spirit will help you, but you have to walk the steps first. You can't just say, Spirit will help me, Spirit will help me, Spirit will help me, because you don't learn anything. And if you're not learning anything, or if you're not doing anything, or if you're not achieving something and having that feeling of achievement because you took those steps forward, even if it's 2 baby steps at a time, there's no, life becomes like Rosette's whipped cream. It's like, well, it looks good, but what is it really? Or the image is right, but what is it really? I'm sure my guardian angel steps in every now and then, that the spirit steps in every now and then when something has to take place. But when it comes to writing the book that I need to write, or interacting with the person that I'm interacting with and learning from it, we're 2 separate entities. So I got to learn for myself and do for myself to get to that next level. Yeah, and that's what a lot of people think that Spirit's going to do it for them, or Spirit's going to make it happen. But if you just sit back and expect that, you'll be very disappointed. Gail asked you a question. Did you create the Undo method yourself, or did you work with others? That it was 100% me. It took about, I'd say, right at 7 years. I wrote 3
3 books. They're at promec.com, and they're called the CLM. And I took from the CLM, it was a learning method for martial art, and I created Undo out of that.
Great. Well, we are so happy to have you on. We're running out of time. We got to go to commercial break. I think I'm going to read some of this, and next time you come on, we'll talk about your Bigfoot hunting. We didn't get to it.
I just want to make sure that people know you can go to IamMattPowell.com, and that's everything that I have social media wise is I am Matt Powell. And you can go to IamMattPowell.com. That'll bring you to the website. If you want to look at Undo, it's at undothepast.com. And I really appreciate you having me on. I really do, Elizabeth.
We love having you. Thanks so much for being here. And thanks, everyone, for listening to Cosmic Passport. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large. Heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out...
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
Thank you, Dave Scott. It is I, James Tyson, just like Dave said. I'm broadcasting to you from my little log cabin on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network here in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast. It's kind of that whole Pacific Northwest, Cascadia, if you want to look up that one. I want to welcome everybody listening at WQEE outside of Atlanta, in the metro Atlanta area, Noonan, Georgia. And love the area. Was down in Atlanta for a while on some courses down there. I golfed a lot. That was a wonderful area. I love it. And I'd like to thank everybody from that area, our Metro Atlanta friends, for dropping by. And if you want to see what's coming up, just go over to the website at spacedoutradio.com and you'll see who's on next. Tomorrow night I have 2 mediums and a large. Yeah, I'm the large, but it's a call-in, so you can call in to have a free psychic reading or have a little bit of a numerology reading. So that's tomorrow night. And that's for you, new people listening to us out of Noonan, Georgia, and the greater Atlanta area. Tonight, though, while I have you here, it's like I'm saying, okay, well, I got you, and I actually know you're listening, and I can see you. That's the other thing that you probably don't understand with the modern marvels of radio that we have up here. I can actually see you down there in Noonan, Georgia. And now I'm totally freaking out the guy who's working the boards down there. But it's okay. You'll get used to me freaking you out because it's actually what I do, and I quite enjoy it. But tonight we have a really special crew here, and one of the things that I find very interesting about this experience that I have as a host of a paranormal show is that I get to run into people that are of like mind and are extremely, extremely interesting. Tonight, I have Alan Feldman and Heather Giamboi. Okay, Heather, hold on. Did I say your name right? I should have asked you how to say that.
Oh, close. Giamboi.
Say it again?
Giamboi.
Giamboi. Oh, see, it's a lot easier once I understand how to properly say it. It's a lot easier. We have Alan Feldman and Heather Giamboi. They're accomplished soul travelers, and now over several decades, they have been doing this. They are authors and spiritual teachers of highly freeing form of advanced spiritual travel to the heavens. They speak and teach on the subjects of out-of-body travel, how to become spiritual travelers, and returning to God. Heather is a spiritual traveler, teacher, and the president of VARDANKAR. And Alan is the head spiritual teacher and head of VARDANKAR, helping individuals experience extraordinary worlds of consciousness in the heavens of pure spirit. Now, if you are someone who's interested in out-of-body travel, or if it's something you've been told that you've been doing when you describe something that happens in the evening or at night, or the types of dreams you have, pay attention to this, because I'm going to drill down into it, and these are the people that will be able to tell us exactly what's what's happening with that. Hello, Alan. Hello, Heather. How are you?
Hi, James. It's such a pleasure to be on. I'm really enjoying your preamble. It's great.
You seem very interesting.
I think it's better to be called a ramble. It's a pre-ramble. It's very interesting. Where do I begin? Here you have written about experiences and continue to teach about an experience that only few of us perceive that we have. I'm going to start with Heather. Heather, in your case, when did this light first come on? When did you realize that you were actually had control over these kind of dream moves, if I can call them that? Because I've never done it consciously, I don't even know how to go there. What would you call that?
Well, I would say that related to out-of-body experiences, initially my first experience was when I had a very strong desire for God. I really had this urge that I wanted to know the meaning of life, the purpose of life. And I just called out, God, if there is a God, show me a real teacher. And shortly after that, I had this out-of-body experience where I touched a book, and I felt a flash of this other world, this brilliant white universe, a pure positive God world. And that experience gave me a sense of that heaven isn't something you can connect with just after death. You don't have to wait until you die. You can have direct experiences of heaven now. A lot of times most people are doing out-of-body travel, but they may not be fully conscious of it. And I gave this example once before. Have you ever had some people have had the experience where they're thinking of somebody, and then all of a sudden that person calls on the telephone. It's like a part of them that is soul is somehow connected and with that person. So when we place our attention someplace, people are already doing out-of-body travel. They just have to become more conscious of it. And for me, having certain experiences like that opened up that world, because it's really a way of actually, a lot of people might not realize this, but out-of-body travel is the most direct way of making contact with heaven and with God. But it has to be done in a way that's very pure and very spiritual.
Oh, it's amazing. Alan, what about you? When did this first hit you?
Well, I had experiences since I was a little kid, but I didn't really understand what was going on. And I think most of us have been in that boat. For example, a dream experience is a spiritual experience, but it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. You know what I mean? It's like a dream, and you're like, was it my imagination, or what was going on? And a lot of times they're really weird or scary or different. It wasn't until I found the works of Paul Twitchell, when I read the book The Tiger's Fang and a couple of his other books, that I started to realize that this was actually a method, and that there was a lot of places that had been mapped out, that had been explored by these spiritual travelers, that they had actually gone, just like the old explorers like Magellan and Christopher Columbus, and they had gone out in ships and explored different continents and different areas, that there were these spiritual travelers who had actually gone into that there's more than one heaven. And they'd explored all these various places and regions, and then reported back, and then taught their methods to their students, mostly secret, because mostly they had to do it secretively, because if you know anything about history, I'm sure you do, you know that in the old days, people were killed for talking about stuff like this.
Yes.
So a lot of times it was really private. It was like, a lot of times these masters would have a public side. They would talk about, for example, Socrates was a Vardan master, but he did publicly, he kind of hid it within the field of philosophy, and, he had to be careful. The same thing with Plato, like they had to be really careful about what they said and what they didn't say. And so they would have two levels of students. They'd have the students that were public, the information that they would give out to the public, which would keep them from being killed or persecuted or fired or whatever. And then they had the information that was for the very small group of students that they trusted. And so this has been taught for ages. It goes way, way back. And it's had many, many different names. VARDANKAR is just one of many names. It's not really the name that's important. It's the actual ancient science of out-of-body travel, or soul travel, or Tusa travel. And it's really, a better word is projection rather than travel, because you're really doing soul projection. Because these states exist beyond time and space, so you're really just putting your attention on them. And it's like you jump to wherever you put your attention. I mean, it's like the old exercise that people used to do, where you say, like, we could do this right now. Like, I want you to, whatever you do not see in your imagination a picture of an elephant. Like, I just want you to block out. You can see anything else. You can see food, whatever you want to see. Just don't see any kind of elephants in your imagination, okay? So now, I'm about to test you, and I'm going to say the word elephant 3 times. And whatever you do, you can think of any image you want, but not elephants. Are you ready? Here we go. Elephant.
Drat.
Don't think about it. Elephant. Elephant. Now, what did you see?
Oh, quit it. I had 3 elephants.
Okay, there you go.
And they were all laughing at me. Saying,
yes!
Yeah, it was a trick, and you bought into it.
It was a very good trick.
Yeah. Well, that's
so
funny.
These things exist. It's a matter of putting attention on them.
Yeah.
And these different planes, some of them are absolutely beyond words. People get little hints of them. Like, for example, people will read these books on near-death experiences, and somebody will touch upon one of these planes, not even the highest plane. And if you notice, it's really hard for some of them to describe it.
Yeah.
It's so profound.
One of my friends, Eugene Braxton, I don't know if you've read his book, but he was one of these kids that did, when I say kids, he was doing astral projection or astral traveling before he knew what it was, when he was very, very young. And he was very common. He would float around doing these things. He actually had a near-death experience at the age of 17. And because he was so used to stepping out of his body, he stepped out and watched himself drown. And because of all his time in doing the astral projection, or the soul traveling, he remembered every moment of his experience, going up with a guide, going through the process of, you accept this part of your life that was a bit negative, and he was only 17, so it was a quick one, over to he said all the good stuff you did. He then described a beach and a light being that he could only describe as the God source, who appeared not as anything other than a energy, and said, basically, you're not supposed to be here, you have to go back. And off he went. Yeah. It went through his book is quite interesting, because it goes through him going to university and being studied and doing hypnotherapy, where he continues to repeat the same story over and over again. But it was lucky for us, as the people learning about this, is that he had a complete memory of leaving the body and coming back, and his visit to heaven. And that was the first time.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was the first time I heard. So that to me, what you were doing is being able to touch what he fell into, literally, being able to do that consciously and teach this to people.
Now, what really is mind-blowing about this whole thing is that the astral plane is only the second plane on the chart, and that there's actually, there's infinite planes, but the 12th, we have a Godwell chart on the website if anyone wants to check it out, but it goes from the physical to the 12th plane, and then, of course, there's more than that. and each of these planes is described in some detail if you go through the books. So astral projection is actually limited to the astral plane, which is only the second plane. So remember I was saying before how this has been mapped out by various spiritual travelers throughout the ages? And so it's really interesting because you start getting into one of the problems that people face is that there's no common language to this, you know. In other words, like when the physical, it's a little easier because, you know, like plastic or wood or something, you know, oak or, you know, people have a common language. Even if you're translating from Russian to American, English or whatever, there's a certain, you know, equivalent for oak in Russia. You know, it means oak, you know, oak wood. Mm-hmm. With the spiritual terminology, it's not like that in general. There's a lot of variation, so it's really hard to communicate. So somebody will say something like in the New Age movement, they'll talk about the fifth dimension. But the fifth plane, when we talk about the fifth plane, it's not the same as the fifth dimension. So there's a lot of tremendous amount of confusion in the whole spiritual arena. In fact, people even confuse their lower bodies, like the astral plane, like the astral body. They'll confuse their astral body for soul.
Okay.
So part of when we have students, there's a lot of unlearning to do. You know, and you know what they say, when you get rid of something, you got to replace it with something else. You can't just leave a vacuum there. So there's a lot of unlearning. We find that there's a lot of dogma and superstition and attachments to most people have a lot of things that they think they know, and because they've had experiences, but they misinterpreted the experiences. And so people will confuse the astral body for soul, and they'll have an experience, because the astral body is so much nicer than the physical body. It's so much more free to be in the astral plane. And there's different levels of the astral plane, which make it even more confusing. I'll give an analogy of the Earth. Like you could go to this most beautiful place in Hawaii and just lie in a hammock in the sun and listen to the sound of the water and the seagulls, and it would be probably a really positive experience. Or you can go in the middle of some desert where there's like machine gun fire, and that would probably be a more of a negative experience. Mm-hmm. And yet they're located on the same planet.
Yeah.
Just different vibrations.
Now, I understand, or that was a bad way of putting it. Because I don't understand dimensional things like people we've talked to who have psychic connections to, we'll call it seventh dimensional beings or eighth dimensional light beings. Now, those dimensions, are they similar to what you're talking about in the 12?
No.
Okay.
That's what makes it really confusing, is that they're not. And so one of the things that has to be done is the student sort of has to let go of a lot of what they think they know, mm-hmm. and they have to kind of like look at it from a different perspective and kind of learn the way it really is. I hate to say it because it maybe sounds arrogant or it sounds pushy, but the truth is that we really have a tremendously distorted viewpoint of reality. And so a lot of it is unlearning all these things that seem real. It's sort of an analogy would be like if you were in a dark cave. Imagine people living in the bottom of a cave where it's really, really dark, and maybe there's a little tiny hole at the top of the cave that lets in a little bit of light. And then one day they break free of this cave, and all of a sudden they're in this beautiful field, and there are flowers, and the sun is out, and the clouds are out, and it's just, you know, it would be very easy for them to call that heaven or paradise, you know, because the contrast would be so stark.
Yeah.
What happens, if I can add, is
yes.
There are certain levels of heaven called the lower worlds, or the worlds of mist, M-E-S-T, matter, energy, space, and time. Mm-hmm. And these lower worlds or planes, such as the astral plane, causal plane, mental, and etheric, they are composed of a mixture of spirit and matter. But the higher a person gets in the astral plane, for example, the more minute the matter gets, to the point that it becomes so minute that you can barely detect it, and there's so much more light that it looks so wondrous. So one of the illusions of the lower levels of heaven is that there's a profound illusion of great spiritual advancement and a very, very high level of heaven when we haven't even left the astral plane. And then when we get into the causal plane, which is the place of the Akashic records, the vibration and the light becomes even greater. And this continues the higher we get. By the time we hit what's called the second grand division, there's sort of a void between these levels of heaven and the pure positive God worlds. It is a huge jump, because these pure positive God worlds sort of break all the rules of these lower worlds. And what happens is these lower worlds, one of the reasons why some people will experience dangers in astral projection — we don't do astral projection, we do soul or Tusa travel, which is with the soul, pure soul, true self, is that in these lower worlds, they are the domain of the negative power. And because of that, there is a lot of profound, powerful illusion that occurs. So it will give us the feeling that we have become spiritually free, or that we have found enlightenment, or we're close to finding enlightenment, when we are maybe just beginning. And each level can have that illusion within it in these lower worlds. So that's why it's very, from my perspective, I've been training with a spiritual master for over 20 years, a master of Tusa travel. And one of the important things, it's sort of like when somebody goes to school to say, I don't know, if somebody wanted to learn to be a doctor, by training with somebody who's an expert, I was able to learn sort of like the basics, because it's very easy to get lost in the lower worlds and to mistake a lower plane for a higher one. It's extremely, it's a very easy mistake to make, because they're designed that way. They're designed as a school for soul, but they also trap souls in karma and reincarnation. And in order to actually free ourselves, it's almost like, in a sense, like the movie, the Kowalski brothers movie Matrix, where certain realities seem so real and they seem so free. But to wake up, once we wake up, it's almost like layers of an onion. When we wake up to one level, we don't even realize there's a whole other level. It goes on and on that way, like Alan was saying.
And these layers exist simultaneously. What's really cool about the whole thing is, because everything exists simultaneously, it's possible to jump. In other words, it's possible to suddenly have an experience on, let's say, the soul plane, which is the first of the pure positive God worlds. So it's not really an intellectual understanding that you need. I mean, it's important to have some kind of a base understanding of what's going on, but it's not like you just study and read and get some kind of intellectual understanding. What it really is obviously about having experiences, and so the experiences are not limited by time and space. So many people have these experiences at some of the higher levels, but they're not aware of it. They're not conscious of it. And so it's really a process of unfoldment rather than evolution, which to me is really exciting, because, you know, who wants to spend thousands of years evolving and struggling and trying to move to the next level? That's sort of the negative way of doing it. But the way through Tusa travel or soul projection is where soul separates from the body and is able to have these experiences through the unfoldment of the realization. It's like realization rather than evolution. So we don't really evolve so much as we unfold into the realization of these things, and they exist simultaneously. So it's a completely different concept. It's the concept. It's having the experience and not having to move through. I mean, you do inevitably move through these different planes, but you're able to simultaneously have this experience, which is beyond time and space. I don't know if it makes any sense.
Yeah. it just brings up lots of questions, which is really good because that's what I'm here for. While I've got my listener by the tail here, please go to the website VARDANKAR.com. It's VARDANKAR.com, and you can follow along with a little bit of what we're discussing here. If I kind of hear you right, if in my perception of this is my life and the Akashic records, we sit around and we say, okay, this is what we're going to do in this next life, and we get through them, we experience what we're going to have to experience, and then in the next life we have a number of other things until we're done. But what you're saying in Tusa or soul travel, you could actually skip ahead of that, so you don't have to go through all these tasks.
Yes, you can. It's like a shortcut. Basically, what it is we've already been through all these past lives, and we're a lot older than we realize we are, as far as how long we've been in the lower worlds, having all these experiences. Most people have no clue of how many which is actually a good thing, because if you really remembered how many lifetimes you've been through, it would be very disturbing. Yeah. It would be psychologically difficult to do that. It would be, it's hard enough dealing with your childhood, let alone dealing with most people go through millions upon millions of lifetimes. So actually, it's kind of merciful that we forget these things, but eventually we start to remember when we're ready, when the time is right. So it's like we've already been through all this. We've already created a lot of karma, and we've worked out a tremendous amount of karma. There comes a point where soul starts to grow tired of doing this. It starts to get old. And soul begins to say, well, there's nothing wrong with these experiences, except it feels like I'm just repeating the same things over and over again. There's got to be more to life. I don't feel like I'm home. I don't feel like I'm where I should be. I feel like I'm in enemy territory. Like I'm not. I feel like I'm not home. I'm not. This world is not where I'm supposed to be. There's this feeling of almost like being an alien.
Wow.
That doesn't mean you don't enjoy life. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy your loved ones. It doesn't mean you hate life. It just means there's this unsettling feeling that something is wrong. There's something not like in the Matrix movie again. Neo, he's like, there's something wrong. And at that point, sometimes the spiritual traveler will appear and basically offers this shortcut of being able to leave the body, and that's the point where we start to come to these realizations that we were never our bodies, we were never our lower self, that our lower self is sort of the false self. It's the self that we've created through all of these long period, millions of years, eons of time. In these various embodiments, we've created this personality self. We still need it. We need it while we're here. I mean, we obviously have to have a personality. We obviously have to have a physical body as long as we live here. So it's not that it's bad. We're not saying that it's bad or that we should quit our job and live out in the middle of the mountains and shun all responsibility. Actually, that's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is we come to these realizations through leaving our body, but then when we come back, when we're conscious of this, we obviously are here for a reason. We have a spiritual mission and a purpose here. There's a reason we have these bodies.
Oh, yeah. I've always said that that passage that God created man in his image, it didn't include the 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 legs, and 2 arms. It was the energy.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Yes.
It's consciousness.
The consciousness and the existence. It's the existence that was created in the image of the Creator, which is our energy, our higher selves. And Heather, when you were talking about your the Tusa travel, was not just this me as the sleeping person going out and doing the traveling. You referred to it as our higher soul. Would that be what I would consider, or what other people may call their higher self? That's the traveler?
Soul is the true self, like a spark of God. And we have these different bodies. For example, the astral body, some people refer to it as the light body, and it's a glowing body of light, so it's easy to mistake for soul. What people refer to as a higher self or as soul, it's from my perspective, it can, for different people, it might represent different things. But what I'm talking about when I refer to soul is the spark of God, our true self, that is not composed of any energy, no matter, no energy. It's just pure light and sound. It's without any lower bodies. It's sort of like just a spark of God. And when we learn to dwell as soul, as our true self, without the lower bodies, such as the mental body or mind, or the emotional body and the emotions, when we dwell as pure soul, we have a direct knowingness, an omnipresence and omniscience, where we just know, because it's like we are a part of the body of God. And some people might refer it by different words, but by the purpose of soul travel is to develop that consciousness or that awareness. And by doing that, like Alan was saying, we're taking a shortcut. Instead of having to go through all these different incarnations over and over again to try to unfold all these abilities and skills and work out karma and this and that. Instead, by dwelling as soul and going directly to heaven and having an experience of God, we are bypassing a lot of those steps and learning how to, I don't know, it's like a quantum leap.
Yeah.
You might say.
I've got a question from one of the people in the chat room. Are we, and it's almost like a philosophy question, are we God having an experience as humans?
In a sense, yes.
Yeah.
But we're not the whole. It's impossible for us to truly be God, but we are, because if we were God, then obviously we can't replace God because we're a part of the whole. But we are gods among other gods.
Interesting. And
so in a way, yes, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, we are pieces.
And yet within the pieces, the whole. And it was within the drop of water is contained the entire ocean.
Okay.
It's identical in substance. Water
now I'm going to have a nap. That was a... It's getting your head around some of this stuff, too, because you've got to remember that you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm usually just full of questions and letting people teach me about things like this. And in your case, oh my gosh, you've been teaching it, Heather, and you do this, so it may almost come second nature. So bear with me as I try to catch up.
Well, actually,
go ahead.
Do you mind if I just say one quick thing answering your question, James?
Yeah.
Your comment about it, because it's obviously you're very sincere, which I appreciate. I'll say something that's going to sound a little weird, but it's true. In the experience, when you experience this light and sound, which is the Vardan or the Holy Spirit, it's the voice of God, basically. This light and sound, when you have these experiences, leaving your body, it's almost like by being in contact with Spirit or the Vardan, all of this wisdom, love, wisdom, freedom, power is sort of comes through into it becomes part of your consciousness. It's a little bit like in the Matrix, they have that thing where he learns to fly a helicopter in like 5 seconds. He looks Kung Fu in like 20, remember say he's like somebody's like, I know Kung Fu. It's like instant. It's like a download I'm using the wrong words here. But the point is, it's not really taught, but it's caught.
Okay.
See, so it's like right now you're in the beginning of being introduced to this, and it sounds kind of foreign and kind of like, how the heck am I going to make sense out of all of this? But then when you actually do the exercises, when you actually practice the techniques, it's like you can literally have more realization in like 25 seconds than you would in a year of reading books.
Yes, and actually, a lot of times, people that have a humble attitude like you have make progress extremely fast compared to when somebody feels really confident that they already have the answers and that they've already got it all under control. And the reason for that is it's kind of like we're able to give God the steering wheel. Instead of saying, I've got it all together, instead we're able to give God the steering wheel. Actually, I have a quote on that, which I think is really kind of apropos, if you don't mind if I read it.
Yeah, go please.
This is actually a quote from a past life a long time ago, but I'm just going to read a little bit of it because there's a part of it that I think is very beautiful that this master said a long time ago. He said that basically when it's very important to have a spiritual love, and this is a direct quote. It was translated into human language by Alan. The love we have is not a love of worldly things. When you have a love of worldly things, love attracts, but it attracts you to the world, or rather the lower worlds of matter, energy, space, and time. Instead, rather, you have to have an unconditional love for truth and for God. Say, for example, your strongest love is for a man or a woman, then you'll reincarnate with that person. This is okay, but if you want to reach the higher states of consciousness, the higher planes, you have to love the higher things. In order for this to work for you in reaching higher states of consciousness, we learn 3 things. 1, detachment, which means basically that you're not attached to the things of the lower worlds. 2, a great love for God and truth. And 3, a great love for the Master. The reason for love for the Master is because the Master is the way shower, and you have to have a clear way. Otherwise you move in a haphazard manner. You have to develop a great love for God. It is like a fire, like a great burning sun, and you have to feed it every day. You have to feed it, and it is of the light and sound, a burning intensity. You have to become like a laser beam and put love into a very fine focus. It is not a broad love, but very focused on truth and on God. And this is where the path of VARDANKAR comes in. There comes a great clarity from practicing the path which is the light and sound. It is like a tremendous desire for God. It gives soul this clamoring feeling that it wants God. But you can't tell God how to bring you back. A lot of people tell God what they want, and if they do not get things the way they want or the way they demand them from God, they look away. It is like getting beans in a restaurant and saying, I didn't order this. A lot of people tell God not only what they want, as if giving God instructions on how to do it. And when it doesn't meet what they are looking for, which is very specific, and then they expect God to follow their exact instructions. Well, it doesn't really work that way. The way it works is you have burning desire and love for God, and you trust Spirit, Divine Spirit, and God so much, and you are so humble before God that you realize that God knows how to bring you back to God. May the blessings be. And that was a talk given a long time ago by a master. And the reason I brought that up was because when you express that kind of humility, it's the way that we're able to learn and sort of like accelerate our learning very fast is by being humble before God and realizing that maybe we don't have all the answers. Maybe telling God what to do isn't the answer. It's going, in out-of-body travel and seeing what God wants to show us, even if it's something that's a little bit beyond what we're used to and a little bit, because we're basically just making contact with God and with our true self, soul, and it's a very natural thing. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
And it was good you brought that up. One of the things you mentioned in there at the beginning of looking for that quote was that Alan translated that to English.
Yes.
And I think one of the questions we had in here, if you either of you spoke Enochian. and I don't know what that is. It's
I'm sorry, what was that?
Whether you spoke Enochian, if I'm reading it, the language of the angels.
I'm not familiar with that term, so I know that you can, that soul can communicate beyond language through direct perception.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to, like, you can communicate with any being on any planet or any angel or anything without having to go to school and study any particular type of dialect or language.
Yes, that actually was translated from telepathy. It was an ancient, a long time ago, it was translated from telepathy. But related to angelic language, I mean, many souls have had past lives as angels. I've had past lives as angels. But like Alan said, the pure language of soul is, it's without words and, a knowingness.
Yeah, so it would be just knowing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of our listeners from Australia is come through, and he said he's asking Alan and Heather. He's quite fascinated in what you're talking about, and thanks very much. And what should he do to find out and engage with and be trained by a Vardan master?
Did you want to answer that, Heather, or should I?
Sure. Well, basically, there, as Alan was saying, there's always a living Vardan master in every age. In ancient China, it was Light Zi. In ancient Egypt, it was Gopal Das. Today, there is a living Vardan master, and he's actually on this interview call. It's Naidaza, and what he does is there's a training program, and if you go to the website VARDANKAR.com, we offer a training program where each month students receive a discourse and they practice different out-of-body travel techniques to make contact with heaven. So it's this kind of spiritual apprenticeship is very ancient, and what it is the master is someone who's been trained by masters themselves in visiting all the different levels of heaven, and so the master will work with the student on the inner levels and on the outer levels. So it's a gradual process, and it can take time to develop. It takes about 5 years to reach self-realization in visiting these levels of heaven. It can take patience. Some people, they're able to leave their body and be conscious of things immediately. For others, it can take time. But it doesn't really matter. It's just that we love ourselves so much that we're able to be patient with ourselves and be patient with God.
There's also, we also have a lot of books. Well, we're starting to have a lot of books. And also there's free, we also have free talks on the website and YouTube. So if somebody wanted to, before they joined, if they wanted to check it out more, before they made a decision, they can always listen to audio talks, get a book or two.
We have a lot of YouTube videos. We've a lot of free talks on YouTube, and someone can always look over, listen to talks in our books and things like that. And we have some free books on the website too. So.
Oh, brilliant! And again, that's at VARDANKAR.com. I've got another question here. Have you heard of something, or is it similar to Ekankar?
Can I answer that one?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
yeah. Actually,
that's very interesting. Yes and no. Let me explain that. Sri Paul Twitchell, publicly came out with Ekankar back in 1965, and then he translated in 1971. Translated meaning passed away or died, physically died. During that period of time, it was the high path. It was the ancient science of out-of-body twos or travel or soul travel. What happened after that was that there was nobody to take his place.
Darwin, the one that because the student, I think his name was Darwin, had only studied for about 3 years.
Yeah.
3 years is not enough time to reach mastership. It takes at least 5 to 15 years to reach self-realization, and
Darwin had reached the fifth.
15 to 35 years to reach mastership.
Well, anyway, just to make a brief answer to the question. So during that period of time, it was the high path. After that, it was an offshoot. In other words, it wasn't the high path anymore. In order to be the high path, there has to be a living Vardan master who's at least a 12th initiate. That's like the minimum requirement. So Rebbe Zartars took over the path at that point on the inner. So the answer to the question basically is that during Paul's time, when Paul was alive, yes, it was the same path. When Darwin took over, it was no longer the same path. Now, we had to change the name. The name was always changing anyway, but the name was changed to VARDANKAR for a few reasons. One was simply Eckankar was still around, but it wasn't the high path. It was an offshoot. And so obviously you don't just assume somebody else's name. It was trademarked, and it was just, it would have been very confusing, and we would have been sued for using the same name. It would have just been a mess. So VARDANKAR is basically Eckankar from Paul's time. It was the same path. Before Paul called it Eckankar, it had a different name. Before that, a different name. Basically, the masters and the names of the path are constantly in change.
Yeah. Before Paul, Kabur was a master once, and it was called Kabava. It's had so many different names. Basically, when a student tries to lead the path, it's no longer the high path. It has to be somebody who has God realization, God awareness.
They have to be a 12th initiate, which is actually a higher... anyway, it's a little complicated, but yeah, so that's the answer to the question. It's a little complicated answer.
Okay.
So all of Paul's books, all of the books that Paul G. wrote were written by a Vardan master, or you can say an Ek master if you want to split hairs. But it's basically the same thing. So they're all valid. All the books that Paul G. wrote, including the Tiger's Fang, and all of them are still valid books written.
I have a picture in my head of a master with a number of students around him on a hill, maybe somewhere in the Middle East, speaking, when a lawyer comes up behind him and taps him on the shoulder and says, "Look, buddy, you're gonna have to move down the mountain and change the name because we're changing this now." So everything is of God and very spiritual, and all of a sudden this very human, very low energy person comes in with a writ and says, "Yes, move along, please. This has been claimed, and you're all wearing red shirts, and I'm afraid that's been done." What is? I'm going to throw this out to both of you. What, from the experience over the last many decades that you've been doing this, tell my listener what your perception of God is compared to the perception of what we in the West have been brought up to believe what God is. The guy in the clouds with the
beard. Should I do that one, or should Heather do that?
Whichever you prefer, I'm fine.
Wow, what a Now you're talking about the Western Christian.
Yeah,
because there's so many different viewpoints about God in the Western culture. Basically, it's easier to say what God is not than what God is.
Okay, let's keep it simple.
There's so much to cover here. Let's see. First of all, I want to say, and I hope I'm not trying to skirt I'm going to try to answer your question, but I hope you don't think I'm trying to skirt the issue.
No.
First of all, I want to say that each of these planes has what's called a God ruler, a ruler on it, or a lord, and these are basically manifestations of the power at that particular level of vibration. So in other words, the astral plane has a ruler or a lord, and the causal plane has a lord, and the mental plane has a lord. So these are manifestations that appear like personalizations of the power or the energy on that particular plane. So there is this being, and some call it the Brahm, some call it the Lord God, who appears like this huge man with a white robe. But he appears differently to different people depending upon their consciousness and their expectations. So a lot of the Bible, at the risk of offending some people, a a lot of the Christian belief systems based upon God are based upon meetings with some of these manifestations or lords, and they can appear extremely powerful, filled with light, and they're basically mostly a mixture of mind and spirit. And so that's sort of most Westerners picture either this bright light, which is like the universal mind power. It's not the Hure, or it's not God. It's a lower manifestation of it. It's a mixture of it's a mixture of the mental, the universal mind power. Some people call it the mind of God or the universal mind power. So there's all these different levels depending on the vibrations that the person is in when they're having the experience or when they're thinking about it at that level. If that makes any sense. A little bit like radio. You know how you have different bands on radio, different frequencies, different stations?
Mm-hmm.
So these planes are very much like that. So the actual Hure, or the true God, which exists on the 12th plane and above, there's nothing that can really be said about it. It has to be experienced. It's neither male nor female.
It's omniscient, omnipresent, and totally beyond the comprehension of mind or emotions.
But you can experience it.
Yeah.
And when you experience it, it's called God realization. Now, you can't completely realize it 100%, because if you did, then you would be it. You'd be God. But in other words, you can't become God. But you can have your own experience of it. And when this happens and you gain this God realization, and there are different levels of God realization, there's different levels of that realization, then things completely change. Your life completely changes. And you become like this carrier of that consciousness. So it's a very, very positive thing as far as spiritually. It's a huge... And of course, you become eligible for becoming a Vardan master. There's this tremendous love, wisdom, power, and freedom that you experience. You become a part of it. So it's really an experiential thing, and it's not an intellectual thing. It's not something you can easily write about. And if you did write about it, it would be very... it would not be the same as having the experience.
Well, that's kind of it. I almost said that's kind of interesting. That's actually phenomenally mind-boggling as opposed to kind of interesting. Yeah.
I guess just to say one last thing about it.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to just give you really, really short, quick, pithy answers. But the truth is that this is precisely why we need to work with a spiritual traveler on the inner, because otherwise what happens is we get lost. And the good news is you don't have to get lost. The bad news is if you try to do it on your own, you will get lost.
Yeah, I was kind of almost wondering how this started out, who the first person was and how they made it, and come back to say, hey, I found a shortcut. Let's and trust me, it'll work. And of course, they're all... I don't know if you ever saw the Monty Python movie, The Life of Brian. A shoe. He's left a shoe. It's like, okay, I've got followers now. They're all going to go with me. And he said, I don't want followers. It's a shoe. Leave me alone. When we do go through times on Earth when we, and I want to in the global we at times need to follow someone. There's always that lack of, whether it's belief or trust or understanding, which leads us to want to fill a void in our life, and therefore we kind of search for certain people to guide us at areas in our life. Hopefully, and we kind of talked about this off air, when it's your time, or when it's time, it's going to happen. And hopefully you're going to be led by someone who's not going to lead you over a cliff, or at least you're going to find out when the person in front of you disappears, and unfortunately the person behind you pushes you. it's one of those things. When this goes back, when you kind of look in the rearview mirror at the VARDANKAR and the Vardan, where do you see this beginning? When you were involved, who, Alan or Heather, which one of you got involved in this first?
Oh, well, actually, he's older than me, so he would have found it first. But recently we had an experience where we remembered practicing this a long time ago, and as well in other past lives. In fact, in other lives on other planets too. Actually, I'm going to I'm finishing off a book about that now, about a very ancient past life. But we've been doing this for. He's been doing this since he was, a teenager, and I've been doing this. Well, he's been doing this for 30 years, and I've been doing this for 20 years.
You're catching up.
Okay.
We're going to take our 6-minute break here, not the 7-minute, and we're going to come back with more from Alan Feldman and Heather, whose last name I'll be able to pronounce.
This is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
It is I am back, and you are too. We are with our guests tonight, Alan Feldman and Heather Giamboi. We're with Heather and Alan. And you can't hate. Deep breath. There we go. Just because my tongue can trip wildly over a name like that. Dave's better at pronouncing really bad things. One of our great friends here usually throws a word up on one of his shows, Dave Scott shows, and it's a long, convoluted word that Dave is made to say. And I don't get that, which is good because there are times I can't say the names of my guests. But I can say VARDANKAR, VANDANKAR, and .com. Go to the website and see all the shenanigans they're getting up to spiritually and to do with this thing that we've called out-of-body travel, astro travel. But I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say astro travel because that's only one of those little places that those lives, those little transcendental places that we go to. Heather, what was the astral? Is that the first one or the second?
The astral, it's the physical plane, and then the astral plane.
It's the second. The physical, astral
level of heaven.
So physical, astral, casual, mental, etheric, which is like top of mental. And this is a chart that you can find on the website. This teaching, and I shouldn't say teaching. This explanation is kind of a better way of, I think, of communicating with other people. It's an explanation of what is. Would that be a better way of putting it?
It's nice the way you put that. What is? It sounds like you read some of Paul's books.
One way to describe it is it's sort of like a map.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have a map, there are different levels of resolution on a map. Like you might have a map that just shows the states and maybe the interstate highways. So the map doesn't really show you everything. It just shows you like a very simplistic version of what there is.
It is a path, sort of like a path where the person is unfolding to different levels of awareness or consciousness, and it's progressive. A person goes through different experiences where they unfold on these different planes or levels. Like when a person has a second initiation, they are learning things at the astral plane level and so forth, and they move up through these different planes progressively until they reach these higher levels of consciousness. It's just like grades in school. When a child is going to school, they begin in kindergarten and then they go to first grade and then to second and then to third. It's like a progression of opening the awareness. So it's a path might be a word to describe it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something we haven't talked about called dual awareness,
okay,
which is a really important thing to understand. And dual awareness is basically that you don't have to be in one place at a time. You can be in more than one place. It's really a cool idea because you could be doing your spiritual exercise and you could be aware of your breathing. At the same time, you could be thinking about what you had for dinner, or what you want to have for dinner. So you're having thoughts. But at the same time, you can also have an experience in one of these other planes. So I guess in that case, it would be triple awareness or tri-awareness. The point is that since time and space don't really exist, we're really playing around with our attention, where we're putting our attention.
Yeah.
And so you could be sitting there and you're thinking, oh, this isn't working. I'm not leaving my body. This just isn't working, because I can feel this tickle on my leg, and I'm thinking these thoughts about feeling the tickle on my leg. So it's not working. But what people fail to realize is that sometimes it's just a tiny bit of their attention. If they can just get a little bit of attention on, let's say, the astral plane or the soul plane or whatever plane they're focusing on, or a particular master, that they can put some attention on that, then they can increase the amount of attention they're putting on that experience and decrease the amount of attention they're putting on these other experiences. And so it kind of opens up a whole new world, because now you don't have to have 100% of your attention on this experience that you're trying to have. You can have 10% or 20% or 50%.
Okay. One of the things that I would like to know is how do I start this? Like, if I was, is it dangerous for me to try to jump into this if I was going to sit in a chair and say, okay, I want to go from point A to point B right now without going through, I'm a typical, personality that is, just show me how to do it. I don't want to go to school first.
Yeah. We could actually if you want, we could actually do a couple exercises on the radio if you want.
Sure. I'd love to, yeah.
And your listeners can follow along if they want to.
Perfect. Okay, everybody, buckle up.
What's that?
I was just getting everybody to buckle up and get ready.
Can't do this.
Yeah.
Any of your listeners who don't have seatbelts on their chairs can't participate. I'm kidding.
Yes. And remember, don't try this at home, except for now.
Actually, yeah. No.
Do not operate heavy-duty equipment.
I'm with you. Let's have some fun here.
Yeah.
So, should I do one exercise or two? Probably two, because I'm thinking the first exercise is sort of a warm-up exercise, which kind of gets you to see that you can get out of your body. It's not such a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, do both.
Yeah, then the second exercise will be more profound, probably.
Yeah. Heather's do both. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first exercise is sort of just loosening up and wow, this wasn't so hard. What is this guy? I don't need him. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I don't bozo.
Okay.
Okay. Just teasing. I have a weird sense of humor.
Just I have a listener in the United Kingdom who listens to this while he drives truck. I'm going to ask him to do this at home. Just listen.
He may have to modify this technique by keeping his eyes open.
Keep your eyes open. Keep him on the road.
He needs to keep his eyes open.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to warn him, don't close your eyes. And try not to leave your body to the point where you're not aware of the big machine that you're sitting behind.
Yes.
Obviously, he knows that.
Yeah.
To tell him that. Okay. Okay, let me take a couple deep breaths myself. Okay, so first thing I would recommend we do is sit in a comfortable chair. Now, if somebody has a health condition where they have to lie in the bed, that's fine too. It's probably easier if they sit in a chair. Try to keep your back straight if you can. Don't slouch, so that the spine is sort of upright. That's optional, but it's a good idea. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a few deep breaths. Actually, I forgot one of the steps. Look around the room. Take note of everything around you so that you're aware of what's in the room. Okay, so physically in the room. All right, so take a good look, like you're a detective and you're looking at the room, the furniture, the You're probably already familiar with it. Okay, so now you close your eyes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to project about 4 feet behind our head, and we're going to look at the back of our head. Okay, so this is not like a big profound thing, but this loosens up so that soul is actually able to leave the body really easily, and it's usually actually kind of fun. I mean, don't expect to get tremendous awareness out of it, but it kind of like opens you up so that you can do the other exercises. So, okay, so you close your eyes. Now you've looked at the room. Take a few deep breaths. Relax. So seek your ears to relax. And now imagine a tiny point behind your head. Imagine a point about 4 feet behind your head. And what you're going to do is you're going to project your vision, your consciousness, so that you're looking at the back of your body, at the back of your head. And you're going to do that in a moment. So you pick out the point in the room. Relax. And now put your attention behind your head, about 4 or 5 feet behind. Just put it there. So now you're looking as a viewpoint, like a camera. Just jump over there. Do it real fast. Don't go slow. Just so now you're looking at your back of your head. And now jump back into your body.
Okay.
Or if you want, you can run around your room.
Now I've got to get close to the mic. Yeah, start scampering.
Yeah.
Could I send myself over to clean up?
Really simple. What's that?
I could send myself back there to clean up while I'm here.
What's that?
Do the cleaning. Yeah, and that's the simple way you were saying to do it. Now, to be honest,
exercise to kind of get warmed up.
To be honest with you, my eyes were shut, and I just saw the inside of my eyes being shut.
Okay.
It may have been because I have computer screens in front of me.
It doesn't always work, by the way.
Okay.
Did you put your attention 4 feet behind your head?
Yes, I did.
And what did you see? Nothing?
See, that's where I was confused. Was I putting my attention to, was I looking 4 feet behind me?
Yeah, in the imagination. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so,
you might think it's your imagination, just like the elephant.
Yeah.
Elephant, do not think of an elephant. You said you saw an elephant. Did you really see an elephant?
Well, every time you said the word elephant, it translates to a picture in my head.
Exactly. Okay, so now I'm saying put your attention. This is actually good that we're doing this because I'm sure a lot of other people are having the same experience that you had, which is not having an experience. So this is good that we're doing this. So what you need to do is put your attention behind your head and now look. And you might say, oh, that's my imagination. But think back of head, like 4 feet behind head. Like look and think, just like you think elephant.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Try it again.
Yeah, I just did. So what I did is I was looking out the back of my head.
No, you were pick a point 4 or 5 feet behind your head.
Oh, and that's the point I'm looking from at myself. Okay.
In other words, you're just picking a point. Just like if you had a map of the room.
Mm-hmm.
And you just pick a dot, like 4 feet behind your head or 5 feet behind your head. So that's like a point. Imagine you're installing a camera, like a security camera. And you're going to put the camera on a little tripod 4 feet behind your head. So that's your reference point. And now think that camera. You're facing the back of your head. Now look through it. Even if you think it's your imagination. Oh, that wasn't real. I just was imagining the back of my head. Just like you think you're imagining the elephant.
Got it. Okay.
And then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, did I leave my body? Didn't I leave my... And then, see, it's like you're opening it. It's like jarring it. You're opening it up. It's like taking a rusted bolt and hitting it with a hammer.
Okay. So
it's like now you're
what I'm seeing in my head is I'm imagining what the back of my head looks like.
Right. Did you see it? Did you see anything?
Well, because I'm imagining it, I see it, but I don't know if I'm making that up or.
You think you're making it up, but now you just keep practicing that.
Oh, gotcha.
And then the next time you do it, imagine, after you see the back of your head, imagine that viewpoint is moving around the room. Like imagine moving so that you're looking at the top of your head. So now you're at this point of awareness. So you think it's in your imagination, but that's okay. What's the difference between imagination and soul awareness? You see, you got to start somewhere. It's like anything in life. If you want to become very strong with lots of muscles in your arms, you got to start with some small weight. You can't lift like 400 pounds over your head when you start.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Some people have said that when they did astral traveling, what they imagine becomes real on the astral plane. So when they think of an elephant, they actually might experience something like that on the astral plane. So you don't have to judge what you're imagining, even if it doesn't look incredibly vivid like a Technicolor show. Even just even something that seems subtle is good too. So
see what you're doing. You're starting with what you can. You're starting somewhere. It's kind of like this. It's like, imagine I'm a trainer, and you want to get all this muscle. And so I have you lift this really light weight, and I say, how do you feel? And you're like, well, it wasn't really that heavy. I don't notice any increase in muscle. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, you don't, but it's like you will. It's like you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's...
Follow me. But, if you're looking for like a super laser light show, then a lot of times you're going to get disappointed.
Yeah. Well,
if you're looking for entertainment, if you're looking for like the latest movie, like super DVD, Blu-ray movie, then you're probably doing it for the wrong reason. But it's like...
Well, what you're saying is if I want to sneak into a movie doing it this way, it's the wrong reason. It's...
Well,
this is all for self-awareness, and for self-growth and self-good. So, again, as long as you're using it for good and to advance yourself, it'll work.
Right. Well, it may take time, but you said you did see something.
Yeah, and afterwards, while you were talking, and you talked about the point, moving around, I actually saw it myself. I spun it around to my right, which you can't see my hand moving right now, but it's moving where it came around, and I saw myself from the right looking down while I was...
Okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool. That was actually clearer... that came in much clearer than the first one. It was more color.
You're doing it right. What it is you have to stick with it. It's like, have you ever learned to play a musical instrument at all? I don't know if you have.
Badly, yes.
What's that?
I did badly. I'm dyslexic, so
okay. Well,
or
anything. I'm sure you have skills, or shooting a gun. I don't know when you were in a Mountie, you probably had to learn I would imagine you had to learn to shoot a rifle or a handgun or something.
Yep.
Anyway, any kind of skill that you're learning, you're going to start out at the very basics and get better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're
not going to be a
master
marksman or a master musician, after 5 minutes of practice. It's unlikely.
It's unlikely, but those people...
It's unlikely. It's possible that from past lives you'll suddenly just, But you just told me it was much more realistic. So you're already making progress in, 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Yeah.
So you should be encouraged. See, if you're not encouraged, if you're discouraged, then it's just a bad attitude. I hate to say that. I'm not trying to be rude, but it's like you got to watch attitude, because attitude and anything in life, if you're like, that was no good, I only saw it, but it was kind of real, but then it's like you shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's like, is the glass half empty or half full?
Yeah.
So that's the first technique, and
what's the second one?
Opener. The second one is much better as far as like getting expanded states of consciousness. So, did you want to introduce it? Just basically the hue, Heather? But we need to give it some time after you're done.
No, just
like some silence after.
When you say hue, do you mean like?
Oh, hue. I'm sorry.
H-U?
It's the chanting of a recharged word.
The word hue, H-U, it's an ancient name for God, and it's at deep within the God worlds that it resonates. If you look at the God worlds chart, it's deep within the God worlds, and the word hue is like the word human, meaning spirit man or God man, and it resonates at a very high state of consciousness. And what we will sometimes do is sometimes the chanting of certain charged vibrational words, chanting them will help raise our awareness so that when we begin a spiritual exercise, it can open up our awareness to a higher level when we're leaving our physical body.
Well, you could actually have the experience while you're doing this. This is an exercise.
Yes.
Yeah.
So so you want me to demonstrate it, or?
Yeah, we could all do it together.
Okay.
And then, including the listeners, if they want to. I mean, it's optional. And then, but let's have some silence after we're done chanting.
Now, just so you guys know, this was a question from about half an hour ago. What do you guys think of listening to the VARDANKAR hue? And I didn't know what the hue was, and it was posted.
I wouldn't do it at this point because the consciousness has really gone down.
Okay. Let's get back into this one then.
The hue chant has been chanted beyond when it had the name VARDANKAR, VARDANKAR, all the different names that it's had throughout time. It's been chanted on other planets. It's very, very ancient. But so what we do is we close our eyes and put our attention on our spiritual eye, and as we chant the word hue, we look inwardly and see if there's any light that we see or any sound. And so we chant it in two syllables because the vibration is higher when we do it this way. So we'll chant it 3 times or 5 times, Alan?
Let's do it 5 times.
Okay.
Whatever feels right for you.
Sure.
That was an interesting drop of, or very relaxing. My shoulders really dropped. I guess the best way of saying it. Everything just kind of relaxed and centered.
Yeah. Now there's a very, what we didn't talk about very much so far has been the light and sound. And from the source, from God itself, from this ocean of love and mercy, there's the Vardan, or spirit, which comes as this light and sound. Some people call it it's called the audible life stream. And the most important thing is the sound. The sound is this is like the Holy Spirit, or this is the voice of God. And then the light illuminates. The sound draws soul back into these higher planes, and the light illuminates the path so that soul can find it. Now this sound, as it moves from the higher worlds into the lower worlds, as it moves through each plane, it changes vibration. And it's very, very powerful. There's 2 waves. There's the descending wave, which creates these different planes as it moves down. And then there's the ascending wave, which is the returning wave. It's sort of like a radio beacon that sends out a signal, and then when it hits the ground, it comes back to the radio antenna.
Mm-hmm.
And so the returning wave is the most important, and that's the wave that we're connected with via the path, via the master and the initiations. And so we can go on that returning wave and follow it back into these higher states. It's a very important part of these exercises, is to tune into that returning wave. And so the reason why that exercise can be so effective is because when you're chanting these different words, including Hugh, you're tuning into this audible life stream. And many people will actually hear sounds. They could be very subtle. In fact, in the chart, you'll notice it'll say sound, and there are different sounds that are described as we move up in consciousness. Like at the bottom is the physical thunder, the astral is the roar of the sea, the causal is the tinkle of bells, running water is the mental, buzzing of bees is the etheric, the single note of a flute is the soul plane, heavy wind is the sixth plane, or the alak lok, deep humming is the seventh, 1,000 violins is the hukakat lok, which is the eighth plane, and so on. And then we get to the 10th plane, which is the anami lok. We have the sound of a whirlpool, and the unspoken word is Hugh. I mean, the word is Hugh that's chanted. So the vibration is very powerful. Even in the Bible, there's a passage that says something like, in the beginning there was the Word of God. I'm sorry, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God. Actually, that's really a sound. It's talking about the sound.
Oh, okay.
In our book... Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, please, Heather.
In our book, Thousands of Visits to Heaven and the Heart of God, we describe a lot of out-of-body experiences with this light and sound, and it appears in different ways on these different levels of heavenly planes. The light and the sound has, on the lower planes, each plane has, the light comes in a slightly different tinge or color. Like the astral plane is a beautiful white light, and sometimes it has a subtle pink to it, very subtle. In the causal plane, the place of the Akashic Records, it has a white light, and the light can have a subtle orange to it. On the mental plane, a subtle blue. It could be a brilliant white light on the mental plane with just a very soft blue. And then the etheric plane, purple. And then in the soul plane, in the higher God worlds, you have this very golden, pale yellow light, and it gets whiter and whiter the deeper into the God worlds you go, like more breathtaking white.
Incredible. I did have somebody tell me once that there were to move from the different planes was a task. You couldn't skip a plane. Is that true? You had to go.
Not really true.
Okay.
It depends on whether you have a spiritual traveler that you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
Between each plane is what's called a void or a region of darkness. And it's sort of almost like a fence or it kind of keeps souls from accidentally wandering into a plane they don't belong in. But keep in mind that the astral plane alone contains almost countless regions. So what happens, we see this a lot. People go to different regions of the astral and they actually think they're in different planes. When in reality, like I said, it's like the analogy of being in Hawaii versus being in Baghdad versus being in some other country versus being on another planet. It's all looks like they're completely different, but they're all part of the physical universe. So the astral is vast. I mean, it's huge. It's
bigger than the physical universe. If you can imagine how big the physical universe is, then it would be easy to think that they're, very different places.
So it's very important to have a spiritual guide on the inner who can keep you from getting lost. And so these Vardan masters, there are many of them, they also have golden wisdom temples, which are temples where you can study in the dream state and on the inner. There are various ones, Asclepios, which is on the astral. There's several on the physical plane, on the superphysical, where they're not quite visible in the regular eye, a lot of them, but they're just a little bit higher in vibration. So there's these various masters who teach in these golden wisdom temples from the Shariat Ki Hyure, which is the golden tongue, the golden wisdom of VARDANKAR. These are books that are very high books, and these masters teach, and it's a way of. My analogy would be like when you're in a foreign country and you're lost. Where do you go? You go to the embassy. Like the U.S. Embassy. If you're in the middle of a country, you can't speak the language, and you have people chasing you that are dangerous. Like you might run to the embassy for safety.
I've often run to the Asklepost when I need it.
Yeah. So there is a method to our madness, and I know some people probably think that we're crazy. That sounds crazy, and but the truth is that, just think about it for a moment. Look how complicated something simple is. Like, take something as simple as a fly. Or a bacteria, or a snail, or a gerbil. And, if you look at how complicated it is, so to think that these different worlds and planes and beings, that it's really, really, really simple and easy to understand, it is in a sense, but it has to be experienced. And so, it's worth studying it, because that leads to having the experience, and the experience is what it's really about. So it's not that you have to believe in all this stuff, and it's not like a dogmatic path where you just trust us and it's true. It's more like you get some background, but you have your own experiences, and that's where the gold is in having the actual experiences. But you have to have somewhat of a background in it in order to get into the higher experiences. Otherwise, it's like anything else in life. There has to be some core level of competence or some kind of like foundation.
Yeah. You've written, Heather and you, Alan, you've written books, Thousands of Visits to Heaven and the Heart of God, Dialogues with the Masters. And do you have the new book out yet, The Out-of-Body Journeys, Self-Realization?
We're coming out with some new books soon.
Yeah.
If you want to say the names of them, Alan.
Oh, gee, there's quite a few of them. Actually...
You know what? I'll save that for the last couple of minutes. I see about 6 or 7 on the on your website here.
And if you have if you have questions, fire away, or anything you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you've got the contact information on the website itself. So if you have any questions, make sure you get a hold of them through the website at VARDANKAR.com. One of the things I want to get into now is the connection and what you believe as a paranormal investigator and as an experiencer of human beings that haven't completely left here yet. What do you think? I'm going to get your opinion on this. I'm going to just come out and say it. What do you think of a ghost? Some of these people that I call them people because they were at one time, and mostly are, I guess. They just don't have the meat sack they had earlier. But these spirits or souls that are kind of on the other side of what has been called the veil, and in the last few years are really becoming a little more I shouldn't say more active, just easier to come in contact with than they were about 20 years ago.
Now, when you say ghosts, you're talking about where actual objects move in the house, or are you talking about just entities?
Oh, just the lady who once told on my second investigation when I was the skeptic was telling me, I asked her why she was still hanging around this restaurant, and she said, "Well, I can't let go." And she would move stuff around every so often, but she just liked the restaurant. But she had never, what the term would be, crossed over.
Right.
She didn't want to, so she was still there.
Well, the different planes are sort of like the electromagnetic spectrum. It's vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have different vibrations, and as the vibration increases, what happens is the person appears to be disappearing. In other words, if my physical body's vibration kept increasing, there would come a point where I would be invisible to the average person. You follow me? Because the vibration would no. Yeah. So basically, these so-called ghosts are really. I mean, there's many. They're individual cases. There's no like one ghost and one this. But basically, you're dealing with someone who's at a higher vibratory rate than most people can see, but they're just on that borderline. That border. So there's not really a whole lot to say about them. They're sort of lost on that. It's sort of like the astral physical border.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually they'll cross over. They kind of half crossed over. They got like 1 foot they got 1 foot here, 1 foot there. And it usually this isn't a problem, but once in a while, like you were saying, when somebody's really attached, like they can't let go. I'm not exactly sure whether you're not just yanked out of the physical but once in a while, for some reason, I guess there's a whole spiritual hierarchy of different beings, like lords of karma, and they're not very high on the hierarchy, but they're different angels and guardian angels and lords of karma, and there's a whole series of beings that deal with all of this. They basically help souls transition. They help souls, reincarnate, pick a body, pick parents. There's a whole system in place, work out karma, and so for some reason, whatever the reason, these ghosts are allowed to temporarily exist in that state. So it's not really a whole lot to say. They're just basically, that's what it is. They're real.
I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on that, because I know some of the ones
which was more exciting, but what's that?
Some of the ones we come in contact with were maybe of religion when they were, walking around as humans here, and passed away and didn't think they wanted to cross over because of things they did wrong, and they thought they would go to hell, so they're hanging back.
Oh, that's the power of belief is really strong. People will actually create, what happens sometimes is souls will create a region on the astral plane that is in harmony with what they believe. Like, for example, there's certain areas on the astral plane, on the lower astral plane, that resemble purgatory. And these are temporary. Nobody goes there permanently. But if somebody really, really, really believes it strong enough, they actually can create, there are groups of souls that will create regions that are right out of the Bible or right out of some other religion or group, and they'll describe it in detail, and you're like, wow. And it's just another region that was created through attention. When enough beings believe something strong enough, it's like a dream. If you keep thinking about, bunny rabbits all the time, if you're in the bunny rabbit business, you're going to start, don't be surprised if you have dreams about bunny rabbits at some point in time.
Yeah. There's
also sorry.
Oh, no, Heather, go please.
There have been beings who have become Vardan masters, God realized, who had made mistakes in their lives. They were, there was one master named Milarepa. He was a great sinner. He did all kinds of things that people would consider evil, but he was able to realize that he didn't have to identify with that he could move on, and regardless of someone's background or mistakes, we have these ideas in our heads that we're not good enough, or we made certain mistakes in our lives. But God loves soul regardless of its background, its karma, its mistakes. And even a soul that appears in the eyes of others to be, some people would consider that soul not advanced enough or not good enough. Sometimes people like that end up advancing further spiritually simply because they had the humility to be able to let go of their past, forgive, really love themselves as soul, and love other souls, and enough to give themselves spiritual freedom in God. And so I think the whole guilt thing, a lot of people are taught that they're going to rot in hell forever. But in reality, from my experience, God loves soul more than soul loves itself. And what souls end up doing is they end up punishing themselves with these ceaseless incarnations of painful karma and reincarnation, punishing themselves for the mistakes they've made, because most souls have had incredibly saintly lives and incredibly sinner-like lives and everything in between. So a lot of these creations in the astral plane that entrap souls, again, it's with learning to travel and this kind of training, the person can bypass some of that.
You can also work out a tremendous amount of karma very quickly through practicing these methods. It doesn't have to be, I mean, we're not saying that karma does not exist, because there is such a thing as karma. But what we are saying is that it can be worked out relatively quickly. It's like the old saying, there's an easy way to do this and a hard way to do this. And so by leaving your body, often it's a much, much faster, easier approach than just going from incarnation to incarnation.
Yeah, which is interesting for me. The leaving the body part is incredible, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. In fact, a year or so ago, we were trying to get everybody to learn how to do this and meet at the Great Pyramid in Giza. At a certain point and a certain time. Unfortunately, with the time zones, we all screwed up and met in different areas at different places and different times. So we're going to have to get the global, we're going to go Greenwich Mean Time next time instead of these silly time zones. But, the idea was good, but actually trying to get everybody to learn how to do this in that 6 months and then actually do it was a bit of a pain. And
it also depends on your motivation for doing it. That's a big lot of time. If the motivation is for the wrong reason, then sometimes we get mediocre success.
What I
sort of like God's not really excited about us doing something if it's just. It's kind of like, I'll put it this way, when somebody is doing it because they love God and they want to return to God, there's like divine providence comes in. It's almost like the hand of God comes in and begins to help them. When somebody is doing it for another reason, like they want to find out what stock is going up on the stock market or whatever, I'm just pulling something out of a hat, then it's like this whole thing, like God doesn't really care about that. So we don't be surprised if the results are sort of sporadic and it's not really working well, or maybe it does work really well, but we're stuck at that level because there's no real reason to go any higher. If you follow what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. It comes down to as long as the cause is pure, you'll.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Is that these things have been proven for eternity. People have left their body. People have done all kinds. I mean, this is not new. VARDANKAR is not new. We're not, Heather G and I aren't announcing some new thing that we discovered or some new thing we developed, or hey, we came up with these really cool new techniques. It's not that at all. This is very, very ancient. This goes back before the Earth even existed as a planet.
Yeah.
And before the planets existed, this is multi-universal. I mean, this is like, before the so-called Big Bang. This is like, these are cycles within cycles. These cycles are eons upon eons. It's infantible amount. I can't even pronounce it. So you're not the only one that's trouble pronouncing things. Infantible amounts of time, because time doesn't really matter. And so this is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun.
So this isn't Alan Carr. This is Varda.
No.
Okay.
I'm just one of countless masters, and when I translate or die, somebody else will eventually take over, and I don't pretend to be anything beyond just I'm filling shoes for a short period of time.
Oh, like we all are.
What's that?
It's like we all are. I always think of that with the land in my house. This is my house. Well, for a few years, for a very thin place in history, and then it's somebody else's.
Right. Yeah. Same with this.
It's
Same
not
with
about the
disposition.
personality of the master. One of the problems that a lot of people sometimes have is they get attached to the human personality. They want something, a being with a white beard that has to be ascended, that has to have certain qualities. And when God selects a master that doesn't have the qualities that they're accustomed to in their mind, that they're attached to in their mind, then they kind of distance themselves. But it's really not about the physical embodiment of the spiritual traveler. It's what he does for soul in helping soul to release itself from the lower worlds and return to God. So when personality worship is something that's always to be avoided, because it's a kind of a trap, because then a person is living out their experience through someone else rather than experiencing it for themselves.
We don't want that. We don't want people to point and say, "Wow, Heather and Alan are really cool because they had all these really cool experiences. Wow, this sounds like really cool." That's not the reaction we really want to see. I mean, that's fine, but at some point we want them to say, "Wait a minute, can I have these experiences? Can I have my own experiences?"
Actually, Deepak Chopra gave a quote. He said, which I thought was kind of neat. He said that in religion, you're living through somebody else's experiences. In spirituality, you're having your own experiences, and that's really the point of it.
And there's two parts to the master. There's the inner master and the outer master. The outer master is very, very limited. I've got the same limitations as everybody else. It's only the inner, which is spirit, that's unlimited. That's what we really want to connect with. Is is connecting with the inner. That's where it's all about. It's all about experience, having your own personal experience. Your experience is going to be different than somebody else's. You're not trying to fit yourself to a cookie mold and be the perfect student according to some mold that we have. Like we describe the perfect person, and you try to mold yourself to that person. It's an individual path, and each soul is going to have their own experiences and their own path. And it's really great. It's wonderful. We have individuality.
Yes, and I get, and it's kind of, well, you probably understand this, but I got, when you were talking about that, I got told in regards to looking at the person, or the person fitting your own image of what a master would look like, and them not fitting that image, it's actually a test. There is a reason for that, and I got told that quite clearly when you were saying that. So I thought I better bring it up because I had to. Because when they tell me those things, I have to pass it on.
It's a really valuable insight, and what you're going to find if you keep looking, if you want to, is that there's a lot of tests. We're put through a tremendous number of tests. I'm tested in my own ways too, and everybody's tested. And, we don't freak out or panic or get worried about it. But it all comes down to do we want God or do we want something else? That it's kind of like the test. If you want to boil it down and oversimplify it, it really comes down to that. Do we want God or do we want something else? Do we want the things of this world or do we want God? And, naturally we're going to screw up. It's like a baby. A baby learning to walk is going to fall. What determines whether the baby walks or not is not how many times the baby falls, but whether the baby gets up and tries again. And so if we have that attitude and we don't shoot ourselves in the foot and say, "Oh, I'm terrible, I'm horrible." If we just say, "Oh, I fell on my butt." Okay, that's fine. Get up and try again. If we have that attitude, we will eventually make it. As long as we don't get into some guilt trip about how horrible we are.
Yeah.
Or feel guilty about, or feel unworthy. Because we fell on our butt.
It's basically when you get down on yourself for not making, for not being able to jump over that fence or failing that test. When you start self-doubt and you get into a bit of a spiral, it manifests into something a lot bigger, and it's much harder to then accomplish the task that you were trying to. It's better to say, okay, I didn't make it over the fence. Take a deep breath. Look, is there an easier way to do it? Nah. Well, I'll just keep trying until I get over. But don't beat up yourself, because you're weakening yourself for actually getting over that challenge.
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. And we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. You know, I mean, humor goes a long way. If we can laugh at ourselves, and I remember this one time, I was kind of upset with somebody's behavior, and I was kind of like saying, and they did this wrong, and they did that wrong, and they shouldn't have done this. And then all of a sudden, I was with this Vardan master. This is before I was a master. I was with this Vardan master, and all of a sudden, I was on this gigantic horse that was like 30 or 40 feet high on the inner. You know, I'm talking about on the inner. And I see myself up on this gigantic horse, and this Vardan master says to me, her name was Kate Adaki, she says to me, "Get off your high horse." And I'm looking down, and I'm 40 feet off the ground, or 50, and I'm like, I can't. It's too high. and I started laughing. It was so ridiculous. Here I am, way up there, this gigantic horse, like look like a genetically modified horse, and I'm up there in this image of this horse, and I can't get down because I'm too high. I just started laughing. Of course, the second I laughed, I was back on the ground again. But she wasn't being mean or anything. She was just pointing out that I had kind of gotten on this high horse, you know. And
yeah.
I was kind of, this person didn't do this and that, blah, 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 blah. It was just very funny. But it made me laugh at myself.
If you are like doing a travel, like, and I'm just reading a question we got in here about how you know where, if you're visiting people, but I think you're traveling, you don't go travel and visit your cousin in Idaho.
Sure, you can.
You can, but do you do that, or you? I think there was a quote. Heather had it online. Basically, if you had a chance to go to Paris or heaven, or go see God, which one would you go to? So
yeah. You can do both if you want.
Yeah.
Well, eventually a person learns to work with students, but there are certain spiritual laws that are important, like the law of non-interference. It's very dangerous to break those kind of laws where, you know, if someone doesn't give their permission for you to be in their space, or there are certain, like, karmic types of things, so a person has to sort of be aware, have a basic spiritual education before they deal with people in a certain way.
A lot of it's just common sense. Like, for example, like in the physical world, I mean, how would you feel if one day, like, you open up your door and you see Heather Jean are sitting on your couch, and you're like, "How did you get in here? Who are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's Alan and Heather. Remember you interviewed us yesterday." Like, how did you get in? Well, you left the patio door open, so we kind of tracked you down, figured out where you lived, and we thought we'd drop by, and the patio door was open, so we let ourselves in. By the way, this is really good food. You know, we went to the refrigerator and got some. It's really good. Did you make this, or who made this? It's really good.
That was for the dog, Alan.
Heated it up and, what's that?
That was for the dog. Put it back. You should have phoned first.
Yeah, it would be rude.
It would be rude.
More than rude. It would actually be illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's illegal on the spiritual level too. So.
Well, and that's one of the things that I kind of.
Or how would you like it if you come in and we rearranged your furniture? Like, we're like, you know, we decided we didn't like the way everything was wrong. The feng shui for your entire house was wrong. So how did you and I just fixed everything? What do you think?
Yeah. You know, as long as you cleaned up, I don't mind. Going to people's houses and clean up and leave. Like, oh, I've been broken into, and that was quite nice of them. This is one of the things, and I know we've got almost no time left, but one of the things I wanted to run by you was I interview a lot of people, either psychics who've done this or government people who have been trained to do it, but it's remote viewing.
Sure.
And I even know in remote viewing, if you take the course because you want to go spy on your ex, it's not going to work.
Yeah, that could be serious karma.
Yeah, and basically you're not even given a location, you're given a number, and then you focus on that number, and the location appears to you. Because it's somebody else who's picked a location, they present you with a number, You focus on that number, and that's the location. You describe what's in it or around it or what's happening, and the people who have given you the number can understand. But you, as a remote viewer, don't actually
I mean, a lot of this
is,
it's like electricity. It's like we can use it for good or we can use it for bad.
Yeah.
You know? And so we don't teach people this stuff so they can go and spy on their friends.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't.
Magic is not, in VARDANKAR, we don't condone magic. White magic or black magic. We practice the middle path, which is, when you do something that's in accord with God's will, it's not magic.
Yeah.
But the moment you do something where you bend the spiritual force according to your own will, it becomes magic.
On that note, young lady, it's time to go. It's time to go. Alan Feldman.
Yes, it's been wonderful.
Thank you very much for coming. And Heather, please, and everyone else, keep an open mind.
That's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountain. Somebody hide, somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. Run through the hill like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!
I see dead people.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Dave's not here!